Chapter 482, The Smell of Blood. 7 nights, 7 nights. Bailey Pang Pang shook Lin Chia, who was lying on the sofa. Wake up, we've arrived. Lin Chia slowly opened his eyes and turned to look out the window. At some point the private plane had landed at the airport. Okay. He stood up from his seat, grabbed his black box and walked down the plane. Just now he had been in the psychiatric hospital of the gods. Ever since Sun Wukong had said that one sentence, he had fallen silent again. No matter how Lin Chia called him, there was no response whatsoever. With no other choice, Lin Chia had to leave the ward and wait for a while before trying to communicate with him again. After all, the door to the fourth ward had already been opened, and he could go in to see Sun Wukong anytime. If one attempt didn't work, he would try twice. If 2 didn't work, then 3. No matter what, he had to figure out Sun Wukong's condition. This first contact, although it seemed to yield no valuable information, Lin Chia could vaguely sense that the key to the problem lay in the last sentence. Don't call me Great Sage. Could it be that his illness was related to the title Great Sage? As Lin Chia pondered, he got into the vehicle arranged by Bailey Pang Pang. The vehicle slowly started and smoothly headed towards the base of Team 008. Let me introduce the situation of Team 008. Lin Chia opened the documents in his hand. Team 008 has a total of 6 members. The captain Li Hong is a Wuliang realm expert, and the other 5 team members are all at the Sea realm. Their strength is an absolute crushing advantage compared to Team 009. How can there be such a big difference in strength when they are only 1 number apart? Chao Yuan asked in confusion. Actually, it was about the same. 3 years ago, the captain of Team 009 was also a Wuliang, but it is said that he died in battle while pursuing the 3rd seat of the Believers, and then Huang Yuanda took over as captain, Lin Chia explained. Another believer. Do we have to face that Wuliang realm Li Hong this time? Bailey Pang Pang asked. That depends on the performance of the Sword Saint. Lin Chia turned to Zhou Ping, who twitched his mouth and silently turned to look out the window. Lin Chia continued. If it's a 5v5 match, even if Captain Li personally intervenes, we should still have a fighting chance. After all, we have quite a few trump cards. But if it's a 6v5, then we'll be under a lot of pressure. We're still at a disadvantage in numbers, Bailey Pang Pang sighed. By the way, when will our team finally gather 6 people? Always facing more with fewer is really exhausting. Now that my captain's authority has been revoked, I can't recruit potential newcomers from other Night Watch teams and can only pull people in myself, Lin Chia sighed. It's not easy to recruit people to join a nameless team like ours, which doesn't even have a number. Everyone felt a bit dejected. However, having just the 5 of us is pretty good. At least we get along comfortably. Yeah, whether we become a special team or not isn't that important. Let's just go with the flow. As everyone chatted, the vehicle arrived at the base of Team 008, which was an unremarkable detective agency, sitting alone in a remote development zone. Apart from a few scattered Sha County snacks and Huang Men chicken rice, there were no other establishments around. Lin Chia got out of the car and looked up at the 2nd floor of the agency. On the grayish window, several large red characters were posted. Daylight Detective Agency. This base of Team 008 looks quite decent, Bailey Pang Pang remarked as he looked at the agency. Lin Chia nodded. Last night, Captain Huang Yuanda told me about Team 008. It said that the captain and the team members are all fans of detective novels, so they all refer to themselves as detectives. When they don't have missions, they enjoy reasoning and taking on detective commissions. This corporate culture is pretty good, Chao Yuan nodded in agreement. What do you mean by corporate culture? Jialan asked curiously. It means a group of people together with a common spiritual pursuit. Oh, Jialan pondered. Then what is our corporate culture? Do we even have a culture? There might not be a corporate culture, but we have the culture of 7 nights, Chao Yuan said confidently. Meanwhile, Zhou Ping was lowering his head, seemingly mumbling something. After taking a couple of deep breaths, he finally mustered the courage to weakly shout. Team 008 inside, listen up. You have been surrounded by us. If you don't come out to engage in a fair 5v5 practice match, we will have to take drastic measures. His voice was very soft, barely audible even 10 meters away, but judging by Zhou Ping's flushed face, It seemed he had used all his strength and was about to faint from lack of oxygen. Lin Chia and the others stood frozen in place. After Zhou Ping finished shouting as if he thought of something, he added quietly, "Thank you for your cooperation, Lin Chia." Indeed, he was a bit more polite than before. Fortunately, there was no one else around. Otherwise, the awkwardness would not only fall on Zhou Ping but also on Lin Chia and the others standing beside him, who would be embarrassed to the point of digging their toes into the ground under the gaze of passers-by. Sword Saint, Lin Chia hesitated to speak. "I think what you said was quite good, but could you speak a bit louder, or can we discuss this inside?" Zhou Ping's expression was somewhat unpleasant. "Do I have to say it again?" "Yeah, I think they might not have heard." "Then let's go inside and talk." Zhou Ping pondered for a moment. "I feel like I might have found a bit of a rhythm." Lin Chia and the others walked to the entrance of the agency, pushed open the glass door and entered. It was daytime and the agency's door was not locked, but strangely, there was no one at the reception on the first floor. Lin Chia called out a few times, but still no one came down from upstairs. In the empty reception area, Lin Chia and the others exchanged glances, and the air was eerily quiet. "Strange, do detectives like to sleep in?" Bailey Pang Pang asked in confusion. "They might have gone out on a mission." At that moment, Qingyu shook her head. "I don't think detectives would have the habit of leaving the door unlocked." Zhou Ping, who was nervously practicing his script, snapped back to reality, relaxed his tightly clenched hands, sniffed the air and frowned slightly. "Something's not right." Zhou Ping's gaze gradually sharpened. "There's a smell of blood." "Blood smell?" Lin Chia frowned and, disregarding any potential offense, directly spread out all his mental energy to the limit of his perception range. In the next moment his expression changed drastically. "Not good." Chapter 483, White Shadow. Zhou Ping's figure flickered and then dashed up to the second floor, with Lin Chia and the others closely following behind. The second floor appeared to be a spacious office. As they pushed open the frosted glass door, a strong smell of blood mixed with a foul odor rushed towards them. Everyone froze in place at the sight before them. The office was in complete disarray. Tables, chairs, a water dispenser, computers and bookshelves lay shattered on the floor. A large amount of deep red blood had congealed into hard clumps on the tiles, sticking to the ground and emitting a nauseating stench. In the corner, an old television lay on the ground, its screen filled with white static and intermittent crackling sounds came from the speakers. In the center of the room, 6 twisted corpses lay haphazardly on the floor. Not a single part of these 6 bodies was intact. They were covered in bite marks and wounds as if torn apart by some ferocious beast. Mangled limbs were scattered around, creating an extremely gruesome scene. "What on earth is this?" Chao Yuan's face turned pale as he took in the horrifying sight. Lin Chia's gaze swept over the corpses and he slowly closed his eyes, his voice heavy. "It's Team 008. Not a single one left." He had reviewed the member profiles of Team 008 in the car, and he recognized the faces of the corpses, including their leader Li Hong. All of them had perished here. No wonder Huang Yuanda's calls couldn't get through. This is Team 008. How could they be wiped out here without a sound? Bai Li Pang Pang said in disbelief. Who could their enemy be? Klein? And Qingyu furrowed her brows and stepped forward, her shoes crunching on the bloody clumps as she carefully observed her surroundings, a hint of grayness appearing in her eyes. From the degree of blood coagulation, they must have been killed about 11 days ago. The windows and tiles are undamaged, indicating that there wasn't a large-scale battle. At least the Wuliang realm captain didn't exert full force. Otherwise, this building wouldn't have withstood it. Given the current situation, there are 2 possibilities. First, the attacker was someone familiar to Team 008, who, when they let their guard down, used some method to instantly kill everyone. Even the Wuliang realm captain didn't have time to react. Second, the attacker was a top-tier powerhouse, and Team 008 didn't even have time to resist before being overwhelmed by the disparity in strength, leading to a one-sided slaughter. What kind of powerhouse could annihilate a team led by someone in the Wuliang realm? Chao Yuan frowned. Of course there are. Someone at the level of Sword Saint could easily wipe them out in an instant, and Qingyu added. Of course, I'm just using that as an example. It couldn't have been Sword Saint. Are you saying the attacker was a ceiling-level powerhouse? Zhou Ping shook his head. Impossible. If it were a ceiling-level powerhouse, they could take their lives in an instant without giving them a chance to create this chaos. So, the attacker should be a top-tier Klein, but not a ceiling-level powerhouse. The ancient god church? Very likely. Among the group of evil god agents in the ancient god church, there must be someone who has reached that level, like the Murmur we encountered before. From the scene here, it doesn't seem like it was Murmur. It should be someone else. A person with brutal methods and immense power. Perhaps some of the top few believers also possess such strength. As everyone speculated about the identity of the attacker, they carefully searched the room for any clues. Lin Chia circled the entire office, but aside from the scattered furniture he found nothing else. Sha 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 sha. The crackling sound from the old television came from the corner. Lin Chia looked at the TV, hesitated for a moment, then walked up to it, a look of confusion in his eyes. The white static on the screen swayed, dazzling to the viewer. Chia, is there something wrong with the TV? Bai Li Pangpang noticed Lin Chia's unusual behavior and stepped forward to ask. Lin Chia's brow furrowed tighter. He pointed at the television and slowly spoke. I was wondering how this TV is displaying images when it clearly isn't plugged in. Behind the old television, the power cord had been severed in two, with tangled metal wires protruding from the black casing, lying quietly in the pool of blood. Bai Li Pangpang stood frozen in place. Sha 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 sha. At that moment the snowy screen of the television shook violently, and amidst the static, a figure faintly emerged. From the outline, it appeared to be a strange girl in a white dress. Sha 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 sha. Believers, sha sha sha. Shall die. Amidst the intermittent noise, a chilling female voice could be faintly heard. The next moment the lights in the entire room flickered on and off. Huh. Zhou Ping turned around to look at the television, a look of surprise in his eyes. Lin Chia heard the voice, his expression tightening. Just as he was about to do something, a white phantom shot out from the old television. A cold, beautiful face rapidly enlarged in his vision. In the blink of an eye, the white phantom that flew out of the television collided directly with Lin Chia, who was closest to it. Chia! Bai Li Pangpang, standing nearby, exclaimed in shock. After the phantom entered Lin Chia's body, it vanished without a trace. Lin Chia staggered back several steps, one hand covering his eyes, standing still like a statue. Although the others didn't see what happened clearly, they sensed something was wrong and quickly gathered around Lin Chia. Chia, are you okay? Chao Yuan asked with concern. Lin Chia lowered his head, standing in front of the television, staring at the static on the screen, his back to the others, making it impossible to see his expression. After a few seconds, Lin Chia slowly turned around. His deep-set eyes were filled with rage. Believers, all shall die. He pushed off the ground with his feet, his entire being shot towards Bai Li Pangpang like lightning, a shadowy darkness enveloping his fist as he swung it straight out. At the same time, a strange ghostly light burst forth from Lin Chia's eyes. Bai Li Pangpang felt a flash before his eyes, and everything around him became unreal. A wave of unprecedented guilt surged within him. He felt as if he had done something terribly wrong. He had let Lin Chia down. So, in that moment he closed his eyes, neither dodging nor resisting. He felt he deserved this punch. Bang! Just before the punch landed on Bai Li Pangpang, a pale hand grasped Lin Chia's fist. Chapter 484, The Ghost Girl. The deep blue Han robe fluttered under the force of the punch. You are not Lin Chia. Jialan gripped her black fist, her eyes fixed on Lin Chia's, and said earnestly, Who are you? Lin Chia furrowed his brow, reached out into the void and summoned a snow-white long knife into his hand. The slashing white was lightly swung forward, the white blade slicing through the air with a crisp ringing sound, directly aimed at Jialan's neck. Jialan stood still, staring into Lin Chia's eyes, unmoving. At the moment the blade was about to touch her skin, Lin Chia's arm muscles contracted, halting the blade in midair, his body trembling violently. Surprise flickered in his eyes. This is, he murmured. Immediately, a faint golden light rose from his eyes, like a campfire just ignited, growing stronger and surging forth with the overwhelming might of a seraph. Lin Chia's eyes burned like a golden furnace, his expression shifting from calm to anger to confusion. Get out of my body. He growled softly. Boom. A powerful aura erupted from him. A white phantom was expelled from his body, pausing in the air for a moment before rapidly turning and charging towards Bai Li Pang Pang at his side. Jialan quickly drew the bow and arrow from her back, aimed at Bai Li Pang Pang and shot an arrow. Whoosh! The feathered arrow almost reached Bai Li Pang Pang at the same time as the white phantom, the arrowhead touching the phantom's body without any resistance, passing straight through as if nothing had been shot. Jialan stood frozen in place. Beside her and Qin Yu, who had been continuously using the only correct answer to analyze the white phantom, suddenly spoke up. She has no body, she is merely a magnetic field. Physical attacks are ineffective against her. Upon hearing this, Bai Li Pang Pang seemed to realize something, brushing his fingertip across the green jade ring on his thumb, causing the green jade armor to cover half of his body like a tide. The white phantom collided with the green jade armor as if it had hit a solid wall, being forcefully bounced back. Vaguely, Lin Chia seemed to see the white phantom cover its forehead with its hand, staggering back a few steps before turning to charge at Jialan. Stop her! Lin Chia's eyes narrowed. He had personally experienced the strangeness of that white phantom. It did not use a mental attack nor invade his mind, but rather employed a bizarre method to alter the commands he issued to his body, causing him to lose control. If he hadn't summoned the Seraph's might, he wouldn't have been able to break free from that state in a short time. If she gained control over the immortal body, things would become troublesome. Jialan watched the white phantom charge towards her, raising an eyebrow with no intention of dodging. She took a deep breath, tilted her head back and then charged head-on into the white phantom. Forehead to forehead. The surrounding magnetic field stirred violently. In the next moment, the white phantom was knocked away by Jialan, flipping in the air before staggering a couple of steps as if it had drunk fake alcohol, then fell backward onto the ground. Completely unconscious. As Lin Chia and the others approached, they finally saw the true form of the white phantom. It was a girl who looked no older than 17, with a cold expression, dressed in a white dress, her black hair cascading like a waterfall behind her. Even though she had fainted, her tightly furrowed brow remained unchanged. On the surface, she appeared to be just an ordinary, coldly beautiful girl. But the problem was, the lower part of her calves was empty. This did not mean her legs were amputated. Rather, from the calves down, her body began to gradually fade, becoming semi-transparent and floating in the air. Toe legs. Bai Li Pang Pang reached out, gently touching the spot where the white-dressed girl lay, his palm easily passing through her body, touching nothing but air. This is not a human. Bai Li Pang Pang quickly withdrew his hand, terrified. She is not human, I told you she is a type of magnetic field. And Qin Yu adjusted her glasses. To put it more plainly, she is a ghost. Ghost. Bai Li Pang Pang was utterly shocked. Are there really ghosts in this world? Didn't you run through the streets being chased by ghosts in Fengdu? Why are you so surprised to see a ghost now? Chao Yuan retorted. Lin Chia seemed to think of something, looking at Jialan with a puzzled expression. Since this girl was merely a magnetic field without a physical form, how did Jialan manage to knock her out just now? Jialan noticed Lin Chia was looking at her, blinked and said nothing. She is different from ghosts, and Qin Yu explained. The ghosts we saw in Fengdu are the souls of the dead, unable to exist in the real world for long. They must quickly enter reincarnation, or they will face the fate of being scattered. But this girl before us is clearly different from ghosts. She is inherently a magnetic field, not a soul, has no physical form, does not fear sunlight, cannot enter reincarnation, and she has likely existed for at least over 10 days. Over 10 days? Chao Yuan paused, seemingly realizing something. That time frame isn't. It was when Team 008 was wiped out. Lin Chia shifted his gaze from the girl's face, a complex expression appearing in his eyes. I think I understand what this is about. Everyone looked at him, their eyes filled with confusion. She is not an enemy, she is a deceased member of Team 008 stationed in Tang City, Jiang. Lin Chia looked down at her face and said slowly, I just saw her corpse. Lin Chia extended his hand, pointing to the corner of the office, where a bloodied and mangled corpse lay buried beneath scattered debris. The group couldn't see her features, but the blood-stained hem of her white dress was identical to that of the ghostly girl. Before coming here, Lin Chia had seen photos of all the members of Team 008, so upon seeing the girl's face he naturally recognized who she was. She was a member of Team 008? Bai Li Pang Pang exclaimed in surprise, but how could she become a ghost? Perhaps it has to do with her forbidden domain. Lin Chia speculated. The records state that her forbidden domain is called Spirit Communication Field, Sequence 096, a very rare forbidden domain that can control electronic devices by manipulating the surrounding magnetic field. However, since very few people in history have possessed this forbidden domain, some of its abilities remain somewhat vague. As for whether the owner of such a forbidden domain would exist in the form of a magnetic field after death, that is even harder to ascertain. Perhaps only she herself knows what happened. Chow Yuan looked down at the sleeping girl's tightly furrowed brow, pondering for a moment. So, she might be the only survivor of Team 008? She is not a survivor, Lin Chia shook his head. She is a victim. Chapter 485. Spirit Communication Field. Long eyelashes trembled slightly, and the ghostly girl floating on the ground opened her eyes silently. Her gaze was momentarily dazed, and as she caught sight of several figures around her, she suddenly stood up, her cold expression filled with anger and vigilance. "Don't be nervous, Jiang Er," Lin Chia said gently upon seeing the frightened girl. "We are not from the believers. We are all night watchmen." He took his emblem out of his pocket and gently placed it on the ground. He knew that Jiang Er had no physical form and couldn't grasp the emblem, so he simply left it on the ground for her to observe closely. Jiang Er furrowed her brows, hesitated for a moment, then slowly walked forward and squatted down to examine the emblem on the ground. "You really don't need to be so tense," Lin Chia spoke again. "If we were believers, you wouldn't have had the chance to open your eyes. Even if you are just a magnetic field, we would find a way to erase you." Jiang Er was slightly taken aback when she saw the name engraved beneath the emblem. She looked up and met Lin Chia's gaze. Her lips parted slightly as she silently mouthed something. Sha 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 sha. In the corner of the room, the old television that had been disconnected flickered back to life, the sound of static echoing in the air. Sha 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 sha. "You are Lin Chia." The dense static gradually faded, and the girl's voice came through the television's speakers. Her voice sounded somewhat distorted due to the wear of the old hardware, but her tone still conveyed a sense of surprise. Lin Chia then realized that Jiang Er was currently just a magnetic field, lacking vocal cords and unable to communicate with them through speech. She could only rely on nearby electronic devices to simulate her voice. "You know me?" Lin Chia asked in return. "I heard your name during training camp. 3 years ago in that batch of new recruits you were first, breaking multiple records. It is said you are a top genius, surpassing the captain of the masked team Wang Mian," Jiang Er said earnestly. Lin Chia, Bai Li Pang Pang and Chow Yuan exchanged surprised glances. "What batch are you from?" Bai Li Pang Pang asked curiously. "Last year's batch," Jiang Er paused. "I was also the first among the new recruits when we graduated." "You only joined the night watchman last year?" Chow Yuan asked in astonishment. "So, you are our junior?" "There's no such thing as juniors among the night watchmen. We can only say you are a younger generation," Bai Li Pang Pang sighed. "I didn't expect that. In the blink of an eye, we have all graduated for 3 years and have become seniors in the eyes of the younger generation. See, that feels pretty good. By the way, Jiang Er, when you were in training camp, did you hear about a senior named Bai Li Pang? Bai Li Tuming, who was close to Lin Chia." Jiang Er pondered for a moment. "It is said that beside the dual gods agent Lin Chia, there are 2 brothers who are very close. One is the foolish son of a landlord and the other is the scoundrel who likes married women. Which one are you?" Bai Li Pang Pang. Chow Yuan. "Let's get back to the main topic." Lin Chia coughed lightly to ease the awkwardness. "Jiang Er, what exactly happened here?" Jiang Er turned her head to look at the messy room, her eyes gradually dimming. "More than 10 days ago, on that day when there was no mysterious case, we were playing deduction games in the office as usual. Then a man walked in with a dog." She extended her hand, pointing to the frosted glass door. "After he entered, he seemed very troubled and started talking to us. According to him, he was a worker at a construction site and he had a very good brother who worked with him. However, due to the foreman cutting costs and using extremely poor scaffolding, his brother fell from a high place and died. He wanted to commission us to search for relevant evidence to seek justice for his brother." "Sounds like nothing's wrong," Chow Yuan said, puzzled. At first we thought it was just an ordinary commission, but soon we realized something was off, Jiang Er continued. Although he was wearing tattered work clothes and his shoes were muddy, his hands were too clean, showing no signs of calluses, and his skin was very fair, unlike someone who would regularly endure sun and wind. Moreover, when he walked into the room, the mud on the soles of his shoes still left prints on the floor. The mud was fresh, as if he had just run over from the construction site. However, the construction team he mentioned was working in the west of the city, which is over an hour away by subway. With such a long time, the mud should have dried long ago and it was impossible to leave footprints. This means he specifically went to a nearby muddy area to stomp around before coming here. No wonder you are a group of detectives, Li Pangpang marveled. And then, was he one of the believers? Jiang Er shook her head. The dog he was walking was the one. We were all deduction enthusiasts and almost everyone noticed something was wrong, but we didn't think in the direction of the believers. After we exposed his lies, he sighed and then let go of the dog's leash. Later, that dog grew in size, transforming into a huge, terrifying monster that resembled a giant earthworm. Its aura was strong, definitely a being of the Klein level. When it opened its mouth to roar, our mental strength felt like it was being pulled out of our bodies by some force, and the operation of the Forbidden Ruins came to a halt. Then it charged madly towards us and then... Jiang Er closed her mouth, not continuing. The sound of static from the television once again drowned out the conversation. Everyone could guess what happened next. The air fell into a dead silence. Lin Chia remained silent for a long time before slowly asking, "So, how did you know that dog was a believer?" "After my body was torn apart by that dog, I thought I was doomed. Later, my consciousness, which had sunk into darkness, awakened again, and it was then that I realized the true ability of my Forbidden Ruins." Jiang Er extended her hand, gently brushing over the floor. Her fingers seemed to pass through the floor as if they were insubstantial, then perfectly withdrew from it. Spiritual field is not only the ability to manipulate magnetic fields but also the ability to transform one's consciousness and spirit into a magnetic field. Even if the physical body dies, as long as the area of the brain controlling mental strength has not completely decayed, my consciousness and spirit can still exist in the form of a magnetic field. After I awakened from death, I heard the conversation between that man and the dog. That man referred to the dog as the first seat. Chapter 486. I am professional. First seat. Chao Yuan frowned slightly. The first seat of the believer is a dog? That's not a dog. Suddenly, Zhou Ping, who had been silent, spoke up. From the description, it should be a wind pulse earth dragon. Wind pulse earth dragon? Upon hearing this name, Lin Chia immediately thought of his beloved from the Divine Mental Hospital. If he remembered correctly, she was a flame pulse earth dragon. Earth dragons are the pinnacle of all mystical life forms, existing at the top of the life hierarchy. They are a species with immense racial potential. Depending on their abilities, they can be classified into 4 types: wind pulse, flame pulse, earth pulse, and illusion pulse. The ability of the wind pulse earth dragon is called soul gale, which can disperse ethereal mental energy, thereby restraining the forbidden void. Dispersing mental energy. Isn't that a bit overpowered? It's like sealing the enemy's abilities while still being able to use your own. Li Pangpang couldn't help but interject. Actually, it's not that unsolvable, Zhou Ping said calmly. Wind can stir a pond, but it cannot raise an ocean. As long as the total amount of mental energy is sufficiently large, even if it can stir up some waves, it won't affect much. Sufficiently large. Lin Chia sighed. That was a wind pulse earth dragon at the Klein level. Even Captain Li Hong at the infinite level had been controlled. If they encountered it, what were their chances of winning? However, since each type of earth dragon had its own special abilities, why didn't she use hers when they were at Jinan Mountain? Senior, I've seen a flame pulse earth dragon before, but it didn't seem special at all. Compared to the wind pulse earth dragon, isn't the flame pulse earth dragon quite weak? Lin Chia asked. Zhou Ping glanced at him. The flame pulse earth dragon you saw, did it reach infinite? No. The racial talent of earth dragons only activates when they advance to infinite. If it hasn't advanced to infinite, then it's just a fire-breathing earth dragon, and the same goes for the wind pulse earth dragon. Lin Chia nodded thoughtfully. It seemed that it wasn't that she was weak, but rather that her realm hadn't reached that level yet. Sha. Are you the higher-ups sent to investigate this matter? In the corner of the room, the old television emitted the voice of a girl once more. Jiang Er, floating in midair, scanned the crowd and shook her head slightly. Although you are strong, it's still impossible to defeat those two. This requires the intervention of a special team. The expressions of Lin Chia and the others turned strange. While we might indeed not be able to defeat the Wind Pulse Earth Dragon, I think it might not be necessary to deploy a special team. Bai Li Pangpang looked at Zhou Ping beside him. With the sword saint around, what did it matter if it was a 4-pulse Earth Dragon or a believer? They wouldn't be enough to withstand a single strike. In any case, let's handle this situation first and then report back to the higher-ups, Lin Chia said. The captain of Team 008 and all 5 team members had perished here. Lin Chia naturally couldn't just ignore it. While chasing that person and dog was important, he had to retrieve the bodies of his comrades first. He couldn't let them lie exposed in the wilderness. Bai Li Pangpang went downstairs to contact for coffins and vehicles, while Chao Yuan began documenting the scene, reporting the situation to the higher-ups. Once all the coffins were delivered, Lin Chia and the others took turns lifting the bodies into the coffins. Jiang Er curled up in the corner of the room, watching familiar faces being placed into coffins, her mind somewhat dazed. Although she had only been with Team 008 for a year, she loved the environment here. Whether it was the detective vibe or the relaxed and pleasant atmosphere, it made her feel comfortable. At first, she wasn't a fan of reasoning and hadn't read many detective novels. It was Captain Li Hong who excitedly ran up to her with a mountain of books, recommending each detective novel one by one, even commenting on their techniques and providing a long list to remind her of the reading order. On ordinary days, the other team members would passionately discuss reasoning, so out of curiosity, Jiang Er also tried reading, gradually becoming immersed in the intricate techniques and logic. However, she had only read less than half of the book that Captain Li Hong had given her. She hadn't had the chance to rely on reasoning to integrate into this family. Team 008 had now vanished forever. Captain Li Hong, pale-faced, was placed into a dark coffin. Beneath her cold, stiff body lay a heart that would never beat again. Jiang Er hugged her knees in the corner of the room. She wanted to cry but couldn't. She could only watch helplessly as those figures were carried away, endless sadness and pain churning in her heart. The overhead lights, the television in the corner, and the electronic clock on the wall all emitted a buzzing sound. Lin Chia noticed her abnormality and hesitated for a moment, wanting to comfort her. Just then Jialan shook her head at him. "We're all girls, I'll go." Jialan stepped forward, then seemed to remember something, first picking up the television from the corner before walking over to the curled-up Jiang Er. She sat beside Jiang Er with the television in her arms, her eyes softening. She silently watched the busy crowd in front of her, the television snowflakes swirling in her embrace, and the two whispered softly to each other. Then Jiang Er turned her head, staring blankly at Jialan's profile, seemingly frozen in place. Her eyes were filled with shock and surprise. What they said aside from each other no one else knew. Bai Li Pangpang and Chao Yuan carried the last coffin to the corner of the room, looking at the blurred body buried among the clutter, unsure of what to do for a moment. This body belonged to Jiang Er. In front of her, collecting her body, it felt wrong to do so. "What should we do?" Bai Li Pangpang asked Lin Chia in a low voice. Jiang Er walked up to her own body, her lips pressed together slightly as if struggling with something. "If we move the body, will it affect you?" Lin Chia tentatively asked, avoiding the term corpse. Jiang Er's voice came from the television. "I'm just a magnetic field released by the brain, and I can only move within a kilometer around my body." Lin Chia frowned. "So, if they buried this body along with the other team members, she would be bound to the gravestone for the rest of her life? A conscious girl, forever trapped beside her gravestone. No matter how one thought about it, it was too cruel. Then how about we move you to our residence first?" Lin Chia asked. Jiang Er nodded but still looked somewhat hesitant. Jialan seemed to sense something. She leaned closer to Jiang Er and quietly asked, "Are you worried about how you look?" Jiang Er silently nodded. After all, she was just a 17-year-old girl. At this age, she was in her prime, enjoying the beauty of youth. But her death was too tragic. in front of everyone, to have her already mangled, rotting body lifted out and placed in a coffin, was undoubtedly a blow to her self-esteem. She didn't dare, nor did she want to face such a self. Jialon smiled slightly. If that's the case, I can recommend someone to you. He's an expert in this area. Jiang Er turned her head, looking at Jialon in confusion. Half a minute later, and Qingyu stood in front of Jiang Er. This quiet boy adjusted his glasses, a shy smile appearing on his face. Don't worry, Jialon is right, I am indeed a professional. Chapter 487. Do you want to live forever? And Qingyu stood in the corner of the room, intently watching the mangled corpse, her fingertips deftly manipulating threads to stitch it together, piece by piece, into a complete body. Jialon witnessed the tragic state of the body and silently turned her head away, unable to bear the sight. This wasn't because she felt disgusted, but because she cared too much about Jiang Er's feelings. No girl would want others to see her body in such a state, let alone stare at it. Jialon turned her head and found that Chao Yuan and Lin Chia were still watching. She immediately snapped, "Turn your heads away." Only then did Lin Chia and the others react, awkwardly turning their backs. Jiang Er stared blankly at Jialon for a moment, gratitude flickering in her eyes, before her gaze fell on the handsome young man who was collecting her remains, her lips pressed together slightly. He really doesn't feel disgusted? If a normal person saw such a corpse, they would probably have run to the corner to vomit by now, right? And Qingyu seemed to sense her gaze and slightly raised her head, offering a gentle smile. The ability to manifest a magnetic field shouldn't be able to last indefinitely, right? And Qingyu broke the awkward atmosphere, continuing to stitch the corpse as she spoke. The distorted voice of the girl came from the television. The reason I exist is that the magnetic field in my brain hasn't disappeared yet. Once my brain completely rots, the manifestation of the forbidden ruins will cease. She didn't say what would happen when it ceased, but they already had the answer in their hearts. After a person dies, doesn't the brain die immediately? Chao Yuan asked curiously. And Qingyu, who was stitching the corpse, shook her head. From a physiological perspective, the brain does die after a person dies, but the magnetic field doesn't dissipate immediately. This is why many people say that a person doesn't lose consciousness right away after death. However, for ordinary people, they lack spiritual power, so the magnetic field dissipates quickly. Even if the magnetic field hasn't dissipated, they can't do anything in that state. But if it's a human with a spiritual field, it's different. The spiritual field can control the magnetic field, suppressing the irreversible decay of the magnetic field, and even use spiritual power to amplify its own magnetic field, controlling it to manifest in another form, which is what we call a ghost. And Qingyu finished stitching the corpse and gently placed it in the coffin, continuing, but the problem is, although the spiritual field can maintain consciousness in the form of a magnetic field, it is still a type of forbidden ruins. The source of the forbidden ruins is in a hidden area of the brain, and as time passes, the brain will eventually rot. At that time, the spiritual field will be forcibly terminated, and the consciousness existing in the form of a magnetic field will naturally dissipate. Lin Chia frowned slightly. So how long does that take? For an ordinary person, it's just a few days. But our brains are nourished by spiritual power, so the rotting process is much slower. From the current state, her brain, she should be able to last for about 3 more days. 3 days. Lin Chia turned to look at the ghostly girl in the white dress floating in midair, her expression complex. She can only live for 3 more days. Everyone felt a twinge of sadness in their hearts. In terms of age, Jiang Er was the youngest among them, also the junior of Lin Chia and the others. Having just joined the Night Watchers for a year, she died in such a manner which was truly... Jiang Er seemed to have been mentally prepared, but upon hearing that number, a faint sadness still flickered in her eyes. Her gaze swept over everyone, sensing the heavy atmosphere. She pressed her lips together and then a smile appeared at the corners of her mouth. As long as I can wait for you to pass on the truth about the ambush of Team 008, my mission will be complete. Even if I disappear, I have no regrets. Her voice mingled with the crackling sound of electricity, sounding somewhat thin and mournful. Seeing the atmosphere suddenly grow heavy, and Qingyu smiled wryly and shook her head. What kind of expressions are you all making? What I just said is a natural situation. Everyone was taken aback. And Qingyu turned to look into Jiang Er's eyes, a gentle smile appearing on her calm face. Do you want to live forever? Lingtang City. Suburbs. A black van stopped in front of a two-story villa, and Chao Yuan and Bailey Pang Pang carried a black coffin into the house. And Qingyu chose a relatively spacious empty room, moved the furniture inside, and began to set up her experimental platform. Qingyu, can you really save her? Lin Chia asked in surprise as she walked up to Qingyu. The problem she faces now is merely the loss of brain function, and Qingyu replied with a smile. As long as we preserve her brain, the forbidden ruins can continue to operate, and she naturally won't disappear. Preserving a corpse. I'm a professional at that. From the van, a white figure floated out from the roof. Jiang Er looked at the sunlight above her head, her eyes somewhat dazed. This was the first time she had seen sunlight in over 10 days. She had almost forgotten what light looked like. Without a body, no matter how much she stared at the sun, her eyes wouldn't hurt. She floated in the air for a long time before slowly passing through the wall and entering the room where her body lay. At this moment, her coffin had already been placed on the experimental platform. How long do you need? Lin Chia asked. And Qingyu pondered for a moment. 5 hours. Okay. Lin Chia nodded. Then you help Jiang Er handle her body here and we'll go out to investigate leads. After saying that, Lin Chia seemed to remember something. Can you summon your rat tide? It's too far from Tsangnan. I can't summon it in a short time, and Qingyu shook her head. However, I can start to rearrange the fish species from here, allowing them to spread on their own. How long will it take to form a citywide coverage? And Qingyu thought for a moment. 48 hours. That fast. When we were in the warehouse, I made some improvements to the fish species on the side, and Qingyu smiled. All right, then you can start arranging the rat tide. If our investigation doesn't go smoothly, we'll have to resort to the net of heaven and earth. Lin Chia patted Qingyu's shoulder and turned to leave the room. And Qingyu closed the door, turned on the laboratory lights, and took out some oddly shaped tools from the black box, arranging them beside her. She donned a lab coat and with a flick of her fingers, invisible threads lifted the lid of the black coffin, placing the body on the dissection table. She turned her head to look at the white-dressed girl floating by the bookshelf, adjusted her glasses and gently asked, "Are you ready?" Chapter 488, Fainting. Living room. Lin Chia, Chao Yuan, Bailey Pang Pang, Jialon, and Zhou Ping sat around the table, their expressions somewhat grave. Except for Zhou Ping. Senior Sword Saint, the strength of that wind-vein earth dragon has exceeded our capabilities, so... Lin Chia began cautiously. Leave it to me, Zhou Ping nodded slightly, but right now I can't sense its presence in this city. Could they have already left? Bailey Pang Pang couldn't help but ask. After all, their attack on Team 008 was over 10 days ago. With so much time passed, it doesn't make sense for them to still be in Lintang, right? Lin Chia furrowed his brow, pondering for a long time. No, the likelihood is low, Lin Chia slowly replied. The E-believers actively attacking the Night Watch team has never happened before, indicating that unless absolutely necessary, they wouldn't provoke the local Night Watch teams, especially not a top-tier team like 008. What if they aren't believers at all? What Jiang Er heard might just be a ruse. I don't believe they would lie in front of a group of corpses. That's true. If they are indeed believers, and actively wiped out the local Night Watch team, then I can only think of one possibility. Lin Chia's eyes narrowed slightly. They must be planning something significant, and during this process, there's a chance that Team 008 might discover it and report it to higher-ups. They cannot allow this to happen, so they would go so far as to use the first seat to quietly eliminate Team 008. Once they are dead, no one can alert the higher-ups. From this assumption, many things can be inferred. For instance, this matter has certain limitations and can only be completed in Lintang City. If they had a choice, they could easily avoid Lintang City and go to a place like Anta County, where the Night Watch's defensive capabilities are weak. Their insistence on staying here under the pressure of Team 008 indicates they have no choice. In other words, they are very likely still in Lintang City. After hearing Lin Chia's explanation, the expressions of the others shifted to one of realization. Where should we start our investigation? Chao Yuan asked. Lin Chia pondered for a moment. Pang Pang, go ask Jiang Er if anything strange has happened in Lintang City recently. Bailey Pang Pang nodded and walked into the laboratory. A moment later he returned to the living room. Jiang Er said that due to her ability limitations she can't leave her physical location, so she isn't very clear about the city's situation. However, it seems that earthquakes have been occurring quite frequently in Lintang recently. Earthquakes. She mentioned that after Team 008 was attacked, there were 3 earthquakes in over 10 days. Although the magnitudes were minor, earthquakes are quite rare in Lintang, so it counts as strange. Lin Chia leaned back in his chair, slowly closing his eyes, his fingers unconsciously tapping on the table as he focused on his thoughts. Believers, Team 008, the first seat earthquakes. Could it be that what they are planning is underground? Lin Chia murmured to himself. If their target is underground, then it would be easier to handle. He and Nqingyu's Heavenly Net specializes in underground searches. But the problem is that Nqingyu's rat tide takes time to form, and it's daytime now, making it impossible to mobilize nocturnal creatures for reconnaissance. Alright, Jialan and I will go to the Geological Bureau to check for clues related to the earthquakes. Chao Yuan, Pang Pang, you two go out to investigate and see if there have been any other strange occurrences in Lintang City besides the earthquakes. Lin Chia quickly made a decision. Okay. Senior Sword Saint, do you want to go with us to the Geological Bureau, or do you want to accompany them on their investigation? Lin Chia looked at Zhou Ping. Zhou Ping's mouth twitched slightly. I think it's enough for you to go. I'll wait here. If I sense any unusual fluctuations, I'll take action directly. That works too. After assigning the tasks, Lin Chia, Jialan, Chao Yuan, and Pang Pang immediately set off in different directions. Lintang City. Mansion. Underground. Shin Qingzhu removed his hands from the gray altar, scanning the surroundings. He gently pressed his hand against his temple, walking somewhat unsteadily, feigning a state of mental exhaustion. Shaoshan, take a break. The 9th seat walked past him, looking somewhat pale as if his mental energy had also been drained significantly. Shin Qingzhu nodded, and the two ascended a level via the stairs, arriving in the courtyard. They basked in the long-lost sunlight and let out a long breath. For the past 2 months, their daily routine consisted of sleeping and eating, followed by going underground to channel mental energy into the altar. Shin Qingzhu almost thought that believers had turned into slaves. Of course, he appeared to be working hard, but he would never actually channel his mental energy into it. This altar was too strange. Although he didn't know what would happen once it was fully activated, it certainly wouldn't be anything good. The less mental energy he channeled, the longer its activation would take, increasing the chances of variables occurring. However, what puzzled him was that despite so much time passing and several minor earthquakes occurring during the altar's revival, the night watch team stationed in Lintang had yet to respond. During this time, Shin Qingzhu had attempted several times to find an opportunity to leave the mansion and secretly relay information. But first, he didn't know where the night watch's base in Lintang was, and second, he had no chance to leave the mansion. For over 2 months, their daily necessities had been procured by the 7th and 9th seats, who would buy a month's worth of supplies at a time. Even if Shin Qingzhu wanted to leave, he had no suitable excuse. In the courtyard, the 9th seat pulled out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, took one for himself and offered another to Shin Qingzhu. Shin Qingzhu snapped his fingers, igniting the cigarette tip with 2 flames. The 9th seat took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. The mental energy channeling into the altar is almost done. I estimate that in another 2 or 3 days, it will be fully revived. I'm really fed up with this hellish life. Upon hearing this, Shin Qingzhu's gaze sharpened. He flicked the ash from his cigarette and slowly spoke. This kind of life is truly unbearable. It's like they are treating us as slaves. After all, it's the command of Lord Mumble. Even if it's tiring, there's nothing we can do about it. The 9th seat shook his head. By the way, Shin Qingzhu seemed to remember something. The food in the mansion has run out. We might need to procure some more. Upon hearing this, the 9th seat sighed heavily. What's wrong? Shin Qingzhu asked. You haven't gone shopping with that woman from the 7th seat, have you? Going out to procure with her is even more exhausting than being a slave here. The 9th seat swayed as he stood up from the ground and walked toward the house. I'll go call her. While it's still light out, we need to hurry and buy everything. I really don't want to go out tomorrow. Are you feeling all right? Shin Qingzhu stood up. You've drained too much mental energy. You look like you're about to faint. Yeah. I should be fine. The ninth seat waved his hand. Shin Qingzhu's eyes narrowed slightly as he watched the ninth seat's retreating figure, seemingly hesitating about something. In the end he made up his mind and followed the ninth seat. He reached out and gently patted the ninth seat on the back. A wave of dizziness caused by oxygen deprivation suddenly surged over the ninth seat. His eyes rolled back and he fell straight backward. Shin Qingzhu reached out to catch him, looking at the pale face of the unconscious man, murmuring to himself, "I told you, you were about to faint." Chapter 489, The Fish of the Fish. Is he fainted? The seventh seat and the third seat looked at the ninth seat, who was being carried to bed by Shin Qingzhu with some surprise in their eyes. Shin Qingzhu nodded. We were smoking in the yard at the time. He just stood up and then swayed before fainting. The third seat walked to the bedside, placed a hand on the unconscious ninth seat's forehead, sensed for a moment and nodded slightly. His mental energy is indeed severely depleted. Teach this idiot, has he gone mad working so hard? The seventh seat put away the fan in his hand and rolled his eyes. The Lord of Murmurs isn't even here. Who is he putting on such a show for? Shin Qingzhu raised his head, staring into the eyes of the woman in the qipao, a cold killing intent flashing in his gaze. Woman, mind your words. It's because of people like you who are sneaky and cunning that our progress has been so slow. The seventh seat squinted at Shin Qingzhu. Oh, you two seem to have a good relationship? Already starting to stand up for him? A newcomer. Shin Qingzhu's gaze turned even colder. All right, enough talk. The third seat spoke softly. Everyone go out and let the ninth seat rest for a while. By the way, the food in the manor is running low. 10th seat, you and the 7th seat go out and buy some back. This time you don't need to buy too much, just enough for a few days. Hurry up and come back. The 7th seat glanced at Shin Qingzhu, snorted coldly and stepped outside. A barely noticeable glint of determination flashed in Shin Qingzhu's eyes. And is it? 3rd seat. Laboratory. Soft golden sunlight streamed through the window, casting a faint halo on the silver-white experiment table. A young man in a lab coat stood at the edge of the table, carefully using tools to cut open the body. Jiang Er, dressed in a white long dress, sat in the corner, watching Qingzhu's movements with a look of confusion in her eyes. She gently floated down from the bookshelf, landing in front of Qingzhu, blinking her eyes. Qingzhu snapped back to reality, looking into Jiang Er's eyes, first stunned, then as if recalling something he smiled and said, I forgot you can't speak, wait a moment. He turned and walked out of the room. When he returned he held a small deep blue MP3 player in his hand. In this era, MP3s could already be considered antiques. Qingzhu rummaged through all the clutter in the attic before finding this rare item. He turned on the MP3, adjusted the volume and placed it on the edge of the experiment table. This thing has much better sound quality than an old television. It should be closer to your own voice, Qingzhu said with a smile. Jiang Er stared at the MP3, gently raising her palm. See. A faint electric current sound came from the MP3. Welcome to listen, this is ZZZZ. Welcome to the afternoon story session. Last time we talked about how the 9th Emperor of Earth shattered the divine realm and then ZZZZ. Follow me, left hand, right hand, a slow motion. ZZZZ. ZZV, what are you doing? The disturbance in the magnetic field caused the MP3 signal to be continuously interrupted. After a moment of adjustment, Jiang Er finally connected it to her channel. Unlike the voice that came from the old television before, her voice now sounded much more real, a unique tone of a 16 or 17-year-old girl, fresh and full of youthful vitality. Qingzhu held the scalpel in his hand and smiled. I'm helping you restore your body. Restore my body? Jiang Er looked at the intact corpse. Haven't you already pieced it together for me? Qingzhu shook his head. That was just for convenience and transport. Simply piecing the limbs together isn't enough. Your body has been exposed to the air for so long that it has decayed extensively. I need to help you restore it to its original state, to how you looked when you were alive. I will erase all your wounds, restructure your muscles, bring your cells back to life and let your skin regain its luster. Although I can't bring you back to life, I will make your body as beautiful as it once was. Jiang Er was stunned. Is that really possible? It is possible. Qingzhu adjusted his glasses. In this world, perhaps only I can do it. Jiang Er looked into Nqingyu's eyes, biting her lip. Why do you want to help me? To preserve the physiological functions of your brain, I will soon use ice to completely seal your body. Not just your brain but your entire body and appearance will be frozen in that state. I believe your beauty should be preserved at its most beautiful moment. Nqingyu smiled slightly. Moreover, bringing a dead body back to life is a very challenging task. I've always wanted to try. His smile was pure and gentle, like sunlight streaming in through the window, with no trace of distraction in his clear eyes. Even though he was holding a knife and standing next to a corpse, it didn't feel gloomy or dark at all. Instead, it gave a refreshing feeling. Jiang Er looked at his smile, feeling a bit dazed. Thank you. After a long while, her voice slowly came from the MP3. No need to thank me. Nqingyu lowered his head, continuing his restoration work. In his hands, the body covered in corpse spots and blood scabs was gradually returning to its original form. Jiang Er quietly sat aside, watching her body come back to life under the young man's hands. It was a very strange feeling. Will I really live forever? Jiang Er asked softly. Do you want to live forever? I don't want to. Jiang Er fell silent for a moment. I can only move within a kilometer of my body, like a bird trapped in a cage, like a fish confined in a tank. If I lose my freedom, even if I can exist for a long time, I would just be an eternal prisoner. I don't want to be a prisoner. Nqingyu nodded. I can understand your feelings. Actually, saying it's eternal life isn't precise. He looked up, meeting Jiang Er's gaze. It should be said that as long as I am alive, you will not die. Jiang Er stared at the young man's face, frozen in place. My ice will seal your body. As long as the ice remains, your spiritual field can continue to operate and you can continue to exist. If one day I die, the ice will melt. And 3 days later you will completely dissipate. A gentle breeze blew in through the window, lifting a corner of the pure white curtain and brushing past Jiang Er's ethereal body. She stared at Nqingyu for a long time, a helpless and bitter smile appearing on her cold face. So, my fate is already tied to yours? Yes. But I still don't know your name. Jiang Er tucked a strand of black hair behind her ear, extending her fair hand and softly said, My name is Jiang Er, Jiang from Jianghai, Er from Erhai. My name is Nqingyu, he said with a smile, you as in fish. His palm passed through the soft golden sunlight, gently clasping the ethereal hand. Chapter 490. Testing. I have a question. Nqingyu seemed to recall something. Right now you should be in the form of a magnetic field, not a soul. Why can you possess Lin Qie? In a sense it's not possession, Jiang Er explained. I merely connected my magnetic field to the magnetic field of his brain, simulating a portion of emotional signals to control his behavior. I didn't invade his mind. So, you're saying this kind of possession can ignore the realm of mental power? Jiang Er nodded. Theoretically, yes. But the magnetic field of the human brain is dynamic and fluctuates with different emotions. If the frequency of these fluctuations exceeds my adaptability range, I will be ejected from the magnetic field. The stronger the mental power of a person, the greater their fluctuation frequency. They can even alter their brain's magnetic field to block my entry to some extent. Nqingyu pondered. You can influence others' behavior with your magnetic field, but the duration of this influence varies from person to person. But if that's the case, how were you knocked away by Jialon earlier? Don't you lack a physical form? I'm puzzled too. Jiang Er rubbed his forehead, his eyes filled with confusion. If she could knock me away, there's only one possibility. That she adjusted her brain's magnetic field to match mine exactly. To achieve this, 2 prerequisites are needed. One is that her mental power must be strong enough, and secondly, she must have been possessed by me before to familiarize herself with my magnetic field fluctuations. But I've never possessed her. Could it be a coincidence? Perhaps. Nqingyu nodded. So what did you talk about at the office earlier? Jiang Er paused, turned his head to the side and softly replied. That's a secret. Lingtang City. Heart District. Shin Qingzhu had his hands in his pockets, expressionless as he followed behind the 7th seat, his peripheral vision scanning the storefronts on either side of the street, lost in thought. Today the 7th seat wasn't wearing that qipao. After all, at this time, they needed to keep a low profile to avoid drawing attention. Yet even in a loose sweatshirt her figure was still striking, causing passers-by to glance back frequently. She held a folding fan in her left hand and a cup of milk tea in her right, the corners of her bright red lips slightly upturned, seemingly enjoying the attention from the crowd. "Why are you walking so slowly?" The seventh seat turned back to look at the sluggish Shin Qingzhu, her expression somewhat displeased. "If this continues, we won't have enough time to gather supplies. Are you doing this on purpose?" Shin Qingzhu shot her a glance. "If you hadn't wasted 2 hours shopping for clothes, would we be short on time? Who's really stalling here, me or you?" "What, you don't agree?" The seventh seat narrowed her eyes. "It seems the ninth seat hasn't taught you the rules well. You don't even know to respect your seniors." "Senior? You are indeed a senior," Shin Qingzhu sneered. "Almost 40 years old, dressing so flamboyantly, still trying to act young? You." The seventh seat's eyes flared with anger. "What, do you want to fight?" Shin Qingzhu's eyes brimmed with provocation. "If you want to throw down, I'm ready any time, just afraid you old hag won't dare." The seventh seat clenched her fists, her body trembling slightly with rage, her eyes flickering with light several times before finally settling into calm. "Heh, do you think I'm stupid? If we really fought, the night watchers would be here in no time. If the mission is exposed, neither of us will have a good outcome." The seventh seat turned and walked toward a nearby mall. "Wait here, I need to use the restroom." Watching the seventh seat's figure disappear from view, Shin Qingzhu narrowed his eyes, a hint of disappointment flashing across his face. He stood by the street, pulled out a cigarette from his pocket, lit it and took a deep drag, slowly exhaling. Amid the hazy smoke, his peripheral vision scanned the surroundings, his gaze flickering. With the seventh seat gone, now was undoubtedly the best time to relay information to the outside world. In that moment, countless thoughts surged in his mind. Should he trigger an explosion in the air above Heart District? Too flashy, too obvious, and it wouldn't convey the specific message he wanted to express. Leave a mark in the surrounding environment? By the time the night watchers discovered it, it would probably be too late. Ask a passerby to call the police? The police station has specialists. If there's any information related to the mysterious side, it will be reported to the local night watcher team. Just by revealing the location and the conspiracy within 10 minutes, the information would land on the desk of Team 008. This seemed like the most reliable method. Shin Qingzhu stepped forward, approaching a woman standing at the entrance of KFC. Just as he was about to ask to borrow her phone, a thought flashed through his mind. He paused. The woman looked up, seeing Shin Qingzhu, her eyes filled with confusion. Shin Qingzhu didn't turn his head or speak. His footsteps hesitated imperceptibly before he bypassed the woman and continued walking to the trash can, gently tossing the half-smoked cigarette into it. He glanced at his watch, his expression seemingly displeased. In the mall on the second floor, standing by the floor-to-ceiling window of KFC, the seventh seat observed Shin Qingzhu silently, her brow slightly furrowed, lost in thought. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. After 5 minutes passed, Shin Qingzhu still stood there, showing no signs of movement. The seventh seat checked the time and quietly left KFC, leisurely returning to the street. "Too slow," Shin Qingzhu shot her a glance, frowning. The seventh seat snorted coldly, saying nothing more, and headed straight for the supermarket on the lower level. The two each pushed a shopping cart, first entering the daily necessities section to begin purchasing supplies in bulk. Shin Qingzhu absent-mindedly swept through the toilet paper aisle while secretly pondering something. Just as he filled his cart halfway, two familiar voices came from not far away. "Big sister, I'm talking about the strange happenings in Lingtang City, not the weird stuff at your house. Your cat doing backflips doesn't count." Shin Qingzhu pushed his cart past the shelves. In the fresh produce section, a chubby man was chatting animatedly with a female sales assistant. Seeing the man's face, Shin Qingzhu's eyes narrowed slightly. A thought suddenly surged in his mind.